Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bowlers Union podcast. Today, we have a very special guest with us. We have current Glamorgan and former England leg spinner Mason Crane joining us. He's the second spinner we've ever had on, and our first leg spinner. So we're really keen. Thanks for coming on, Mason.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Mason, we'll straight into it, mate. 5 quick-fire questions. Turn or bounce?
Bounce.
Drift or dip?
Dip.
Silly point or short leg?
Short leg.
Caught behind or stumped?
Caught behind.
White ball or red ball? I know this answer. I'm sure I know this answer.
I'll go red.
Wow. Okay. Right. Can you tell us why bounce over turn?
Well, I've always just thought if there's bounce, you can do anything. You know, you can make it work really. If it turns but it's low, I just think your options are pretty limited. But if it bounces, you know, like I've always sort of done quite well on wickets that bounce a bit because I'll always feel that I'll spin the ball anyway. So if there's a bit of bounce, I'm always pretty happy with that.
Yeah, from playing with Mace, he's always kind of, if a wicket's turning too much, he's livid because he's like, I have to pitch it like 5 stumps down leg for it to hit top of off. You chose dip over drift?
Yeah. Again, just for me, I'd like hitting like the top of the bat sort of thing. It's more my what I'm aiming to do. So obviously that I'm not really like I said, I'm more of a dipper of the ball really, and like trying to get guys coming forward and reaching and sort of landing the ball a bit short of where they perhaps expect it. If you get a bit of bounce with that as well, I think the world's your oyster.
And then you chose short leg over silly point. Why is that?
It just probably goes there slightly more. I mean, I've not actually had very many caught short leg in my career, which is probably something to do with the lack of bounce in most places, really. But silly points. It was silly points in. You know, it's probably going quite well.
I thought you chose the opposite here. You've gone caught behind over stumped. Why caught behind?
I guess because you're the aim at the top of your mark. I guess everyone's got a different like perfect ball. My perfect ball goes to slip. I just like when they sort of prod forward and it goes to slip. Like that's my sort of perfect ball. Stumped is great because it's like white ball. I love like getting people stumped in white ball and they're not actually run down. They've just sort of reached for it and missed it. I felt you really deceived them, but I've gone for caught behind. Just like I said, I'm sort of aiming to try and nick them off to start with. So it's sort of the perfect ball.
Do you know what I will say as well? The best stumping I think I've ever seen was Mason Crane bowling to Laurie Evans at Hove, where you've ragged it past his edge. Lewis McManus has taken it, and for some reason Laurie thought that the ball had gone to third man or something like that.
Yeah, well, the best bit about that was I didn't even get given the wicket; it was given as a run out.
Oh, you're joking?
I was fuming. Yeah, I said to the umpire, "It costs you nothing, mate. Just give it stumped." Do you know what I mean? No one cares about runouts. But yeah, that like things like that are great. You know, batters confused. That's obviously like a really nice feeling.
Were you bowling when Lewis McManus against Leicester, where he took it and he took the bells off with his hand and didn't have the ball in? Was that you or Dorse?
Oh no, that was Dorse. That was Dorse. I remember it. I was at cover. Yeah, I do remember that.
I couldn't. That kicked off, but you know when I was a bit oblivious to it, and then all of a sudden, Do
you know what I will say is that I thought after that incident, he'll keep himself quiet and never do anything like that again. And then this season just gone, he had some rogue stumping where the batsman picked up the bails from him hitting the stumps, gone out his crease to pick the bail up, and then he pulled the stump out and was like, "How's that?"
Yeah, the bear was like a bear thing, wasn't it?
Calm down.
I was at the other end. Yeah, I was at the other end for that. Yeah, the thing with that one against Leicester though, where I do lack sympathy, is he did actually nick it. So he was out anyway. Yeah, like everyone's kicking off about it, but it was such a big edge. I mean, he deserved to be out. But
Funny.
I was at the other end this year when Lou tried to stump Gore. Yeah.
He's got a little bit of a history of stuff like that. Haas, obviously, he's not in the game anymore. He's like a legend. He's like super intelligent, and he's one of those people. But he just every now and again would just walk out the crease. So he's been, that Bairstow run out. He's been victim of that a couple of times. Things like McManus there. He kind of, I don't know if he nicked it or whatever, but he kind of just massively overbalanced and he just stood there out the crease, didn't he? I think from memory.
Yeah, he was sort of, he stayed in the position for ages, like he was in, but like again, he was out of the crease as well. Yeah, it was,
he's a funny
strange one. Yeah,
he would trip over his own shoelaces in nets and stuff as well. Haas. He's honestly, he's such a funny cat. But yeah, I do remember that. Oh, wow.
And last one was you chose Red Bull over White Bull. I thought you'd have gone White Bull.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think that, but it's just because I play more of it. I think there's nothing for me like getting Red Bull wickets. There's sort of nothing more rewarding because in the White Ball games, sometimes you can sort of feel that a wicket's coming. You can feel they're going to play a big shot here, and if I sort of get it somewhat right, I'll probably end up creating a chance. Whereas in Red Bull, you've actually got to get the guy out, which is really hard to do. Especially in England and stuff. It's a really hard thing to do to actually get wickets. So they're so rewarding that a really good Red Bull performance is right up there for me.
I will say I remember them showing earlier this year on Instagram county championship showed your little setup against Toby Rowland-Jones where you were just kind of, it seemed like you were dangling a carrot for a long time, and then how'd you get him out? LB was it? Or was
yeah. See, that's great. I look back at that and think that was such a cool sort of like 2 or 3 overs there. The ball's coming out well. The wickets just started to turn. In the first innings, I got him out OBW with a googly as well. So I was like sort of battling with myself to not bowl it and hold it back, keep him sort of guessing and waiting for it. And when it comes off like that, that's better than any other wicket you can get.
There's from playing with Mason Wrighty, I've seen obviously him take quite a few wickets with Red Bull, and it's quite funny. He'll bowl a few leg spinners, or a new batsman coming in, he'll chuck in a googly first up. And as you see a batsman kind of not pick it, you recognise they haven't picked it. It's almost like Alan Shearer in his day. He starts running. He sets off like I'm up in the air before the ball's like got there, and he's off. It's hilarious. Just before we go on to something else, while we're on, I will get this out of the way now. I currently have 2 massive Arsenal fans either side of me on this podcast, and hey, I need to get out now. Have you fun? You're doing all right, Mason? For years, right when we were at Warwickshire, I used to like kind of secretly want Tottenham to do well, and then to start, and then I met Ricky Clark. And then I realised I hate Tottenham. And I've always had this thing for Arsenal. They're not. We've had some good battles, United and Arsenal. So I don't mind Arsenal. And then I met Mason Crane, and let's just say I really dislike Arsenal.
No, why? What have you done, Mace? What have you done to Barks?
I would definitely remind him if Man United had a bad weekend.
That's every weekend at the minute.
Which at the moment is a lot. I've got to say, it feels a bit harsh. It feels on the cusp of bullying actually at the moment. It's almost typical, painful to watch. Keep plugging away, mate. Maybe one day you'll turn it around. You'll get your Arteta and you can turn it around.
They're hoping Ten Hag is that, but the bloke's got no clue from what I can see. It's really interesting. I just want him to stay there. Do you know what I mean? And he's got a 0-0 this weekend, didn't he, against Villa? And you're like, if they'd have lost that, maybe his job's in danger. But point at Villa Park, maybe that keeps him in charge till Christmas. You know what I mean?
The longer the better. Yeah, keep him in there.
Exactly. But Tottenham fans are the worst, though, Barks. I don't know. Like they're just dreadful. Honestly, I don't know why you would like Tottenham. They're the same everywhere. And what I find weird now is how Arsenal seem to be this like pantomime villain a bit, but everyone's happy with City winning the league every year. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, surely people should want Arsenal, Liverpool to be challenging them. I don't know. No, you got nothing.
Well, no, maybe it's just how they were seen from when they did well. Maybe people didn't like them then, so that could be it.
Yeah, maybe.
But, so, Mace, I'd like to, obviously, for those who are listening, you started off your career as a young boy at Sussex, didn't you? Down the leafy lanes of Sussex.
Yeah, right back in the day, yeah. Till I was probably 14 or so. And then obviously, hopped over to Hampshire, where it's been home really until this year. Yeah.
How did that come about? Yeah. Oh, jinx, geez, Keith, we're on the exactly same wavelength.
Which one? Moving to Hampshire?
Yeah.
So Sussex, you had to in the age groups there, every player had to trial every year, and there was one year I didn't get in, and I didn't necessarily feel like that was right. And I just started a new school at the time, and Raj Maru was head coach, and he obviously had been involved with Hampshire for years and years. And Raj just said, I'm not really sure about that. Like, I'll take you down to Hampshire and see what they think. And then pretty much straight away, really, I sort of cracked on, but I wasn't allowed to actually play for Hampshire for the first year. There's some sort of rule about moving counties as a youngster. You have to have been born there, live there, or go to school there. So I had to wait a year. And then, I sort of had the option to do either. And I just felt that Hampshire was, at the time, maybe a better place for me, and a bit of a fresh start maybe I needed.
Fair play.
That's all. Why is there a rule that you can't go to a different county at a young age?
I'm not sure. I think there was something. It was something to do with you have to get the permission of your home county, and I think that first year they weren't going to give it because they maybe thought that they'd had me back involved. But to be honest, I think at that age, you just need to keep playing opportunities, and that's what was great for me at Hampshire. Was obviously I got opportunities straight away, not only in my own age group, but immediately. I was 15, under 15s, and I was straight away played in the under 17s in the academy straight away. So they were opportunities I wasn't going to get at Sussex, and I just thought it was too good to turn down.
So that's quite frustrating, the fact that basically Sussex can keep hold of you for a year, even though they've decided, actually, no, we're not going to entertain you this year, just in case. So we could, rather than having accountability for their decision making, you have to wait a year for them to decide, actually, well, we want you back, or whatever. And I think that's pretty poor, really. Don't know what your thoughts are, Chris, on that.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah, if you can't have your cake and eat it, can you? You can't say, "Oh, sorry, Mason, we're not going to pick you, but we're going to go with this guy instead in our team, but you're not allowed to play for anyone else." It's like, imagine that in a relationship scenario. I'm going to break up with you, but you're not allowed to meet anyone else. It's quite crazy, to be fair. But I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's tough, isn't it? Because you obviously, you don't want to. If you're a county, you don't want to miss out on players that are from your county that you feel actually have good potential. But at the same time, that's maybe why age group cricket, you've got to factor in a few things like that. I was always quite small, really, till I was about 17. You maybe got to factor in that when I sort of grow up and get slightly bigger, I might I've got maybe the skill set to do a lot better. And that's obviously the problem with age group cricket, is there are kids early on that are massive and they do well just because they're better, they're bigger and better, and they're all the rage, and then by the time they're 15, 16, they always drop off. So I think there's maybe got to be a slightly balance there. And I've got to say, at Hampshire, I really felt that was there. I felt like it was really tough for a player actually to drop completely out of the system until sort of like academy level. Like, they'd always have them around, and even if there were guys that weren't playing so much, you could potentially see why they were they were there because they probably had something which one day could turn into them becoming a professional cricketer.
That's why football's so much further ahead. I know that obviously clubs will buy players at a young age or whatever, but I put this to Wrighty a few weeks ago about being able to move clubs if you're still in contract. Tell me what your thoughts are on this, Mace. I know you've moved, but let's say you were still had another year left on your contract for next season. Wouldn't it be better if a club could still approach you and almost not from a transfer perspective, but the way that you can get out of your contract is for them to pay your year's salary? Was it that, Chris? I said a year's salary?
Something like that, yeah. Pay off your remaining contract and then
pay off the remaining contract and maybe a little bit more, and then actually, I feel that I would encourage more people moving, but for the right reasons rather than just being stagnant at a club.
Yeah, and that's actually something I'm surprised hasn't happened more in cricket. Like, there's a lot of guys all the time, and you hear like from pretty early on in the season a lot, like, he's probably going to move next year, and you're like, well, why not just? Everyone knows he's leaving. Just let him get on with it. Let's just crack on now. Especially, careers are short. We all know that, and factor in as well injuries, especially to bowlers and stuff. It's even shorter. So, I've always sort of wondered why that hasn't happened a bit more, because there are so many guys every single season. You can look in any second team matches, and there's just loads of guys you think, they could be playing, they could be doing a lot more, and next year they're going to move and all that, but this year could just crack on. So I'm surprised something like that's not happened a lot more often. But at the same time, I think there are guys out there who do sort of move now with a year or so left, and it's sort of a mutual thing. And if you're not going to play, I guess it's better for the county to not be paying you. But there are definitely guys out there that definitely get stuck for slightly too long.
No, I agree. Apparently, someone came up to me, Keith, by the way, and they listened to you talking about this on here and said that you nicked the idea off a different podcast. Have you? I said there's no way that Keith nicked it off another podcast.
What podcast would that be?
Another cricket podcast, like, I don't know, Wisdom Cricket Hampshire or something like that.
I'm going to listen to another cricket podcast. No.
Yeah, that's what I said.
That's not me. No.
You only listen to this podcast on repeat over and over. I did say that, and they were like, "No, this was on. Yeah, it was on something Cricket Weekly or Monthly," and I was like, "Oh, all right, okay." But there we go. So we can reassure that it is actually a good idea. It's a really good idea. Even things like the whole, let's say, it's just come out recently, has it? Matt Fisher moving to Surrey.
Yeah.
So like, how long have we all known this is happening? I reckon we were talking about it in April. This rumor has been going round. And it's like, I don't know. Could he have just gone if it's all done? I don't know, but not that he didn't play for Yorkshire. But
I think if the rules weren't in place, Surrey would have dug deep into the pockets to make it happen. The start of the season, that's for sure.
Yeah. Mason, can I ask you a little bit about Raj Maru, because he was a junior coach at Hampshire when I was there, so he was like my under-16 coach and stuff.
Right.
And obviously, slow left armour. It must have been cool to have a spinner at school. Do you know what I mean? Someone who actually knows what it's like growing up as a spinner.
Yeah, no, Raj was awesome. He I call him the guru. He just sort of knows his he sort of knows everything there is to know, really. He's sort of pretty old school in some of the ways he goes about it, but I absolutely love working with Raj, and I'm still in touch a bit with him now. But no, he was great to have at school, and obviously he had been involved for so long at obviously his Middlesex first, and he was Hampshire, and then he was obviously coach for so long. He sort of did it all, so it was so cool to have someone like that every day at school. He was awesome, and he quite a cool sort of story I'll tell quickly about him. But he used to have this like thin black mat he'd put down, like a target, and he used to say to me, right, you've got to be good enough. You've got to hit that 6 balls in a row. Like, you've got to be good enough to do that. And I was about 13. I was thinking, like, it doesn't happen, And he took the ball out of my hand, and he said, "I'll never ask you to do anything I can't do myself." And he landed 6 in a row on this little black mat, and I thought, fair enough, then I'll listen to anything you say from now on. So that was it, really. That was me in.
What a legend. So I played a Hampshire board cricket game with him once. And you know how we were talking about you setting up Toby Ronan Jones with a googly, but you had to, you knew you got him out in the first innings and you were holding it back. I remember playing a game and he'd obviously got someone out in the past with like an arm ball or something.
Yeah.
And in the game, someone at point shouted, when's the arm ball coming, whatever kind of thing. And he literally went ballistic at this kid. Not kid, he would have been, I think, there's a guy called Damien Shirazi. I don't know if that name rings any bells to you or whatever. And he literally went mad at him. He was like, I was literally going to set him up in about 2 overs time for a big arm. Because he was quite old school, wasn't he? Strict dip. Is that fair?
Yeah. And to be fair, I actually know exactly where he's coming. Like there are some times where I'm like bowling and you're like, okay, right, like googly in 2 balls time. I get these 2 right, and then I'll bowl it. And then someone will say like something like, oh, when's it coming, whatever, and you think, oh, no, that's sort of ruined. Now he's thinking about it, so I can't bowl it now. But he's like I say, he was so good, but he sort of knew why he was good, which is not as common as you'd think, really. He's all about like fundamentals being really good, and just sort of bowling and bowling and bowling. And like I said, having him every day at school was such a privilege, really, because he's sort of as good as it gets, really, at that sort of age, up until you're playing in first class cricket. I don't think there's anyone better I've worked with, to be honest.
No, that's class. That's class. So, like, I think Keith and I were both going to get to this, but at what point did you just start tearing it up? Because I want to get to it, and I'm trying to work out the timeline. But you obviously had a year in grade cricket in Australia, didn't you? Where you forced yourself into the New South Wales team. I read today before we came on, you're the only overseas player, or the first overseas player since Imran Khan or something that played Shield cricket, which that's wild. So how long was it from moving to Hampshire that you were was it 20 when you went away or something like that?
So I think I'd played 2 seasons. I was about 19 when I went to Gordon, so I was working with Stu McGill out there, and again, Stu, like, knowledge of leg spin bowling really is second to none. Like, I've never sort of seen anything like it. And obviously the way grade cricket is, you have that sort of break over Christmas, and so I did pretty well up till Christmas, like maybe a couple of fourthers, and was bowling pretty well, and we were a decent side. And then I don't know, it just sort of started to click right after that Christmas. And I just every game we played, I just felt like I was going to get everyone out. And I think it was maybe 5 and then 3 sevens in a row or something like that. And there was one game we turned up, and it was we didn't have many bowlers at all. It might be me, 2 seamers, and then a part-timer. And I remember one of the seamers didn't get it right, the new ball, and the captain turned to me about 4 overs in today, and he said, "You're going to have to come on here." And I thought, oh, it's a long day, because it looks a good wicket. And I maybe bowled like 42 overs in a row from one end or something. And
Jesus.
But that's also, looking back, it's so good. Like, how good's that? Bowling for so long, sort of every other week, and you get to bowl so much. And I was working with Stu, so every week I felt like every game I played, I just felt like I was adding something I didn't have the week before. And I was one game I was like, I'm getting so much more like dip today than I was last week, and it's all sort of starting to happen for me. And then obviously the stars aligned, and Australia had a tour in India, so they're missing a couple of spinners there. And next thing you know, I'm playing at SCG.
Wow.
I mean, was that quite intimidating, knowing that that's not a common thing, right? That, like, as I just said, Imran Khan was the only other overseas player. Were they like welcoming and stuff like that, or is it a bit like, who the hell's this Palm or whatever?
No, they were great. No, the guys are absolutely brilliant, and it was such a cool experience. Like I said, it wasn't lost on me how like unique the experience was, and what an opportunity, because a lot had been made of it, and I know that I was actually meant to go home like the week before, and I got asked if I could stay out there just in case. And I'd been sort of bowling them in the nets most of the year, so I knew a lot of them. But they sort of welcomed me in, and it was such a good team as well. I think that really helped. Like, they were all such established players. Now, I wasn't treading on anyone's toes necessarily, I don't think. And I think it was only me and a couple of others who hadn't played for Australia or something.
Wow.
But they were so sort of welcoming, and obviously it was such a cool experience. It was Pat Cummins' first game for 4 years or something like that, maybe that long, and so he took a lot of the limelight, which was great. But yeah, and then we won, and it was absolutely awesome, you know. And obviously I was gutted. I didn't get to go back for the final. They didn't quite make it through to the Shield final, otherwise I would have probably gone back for that. But you know, looking back now, I probably think it's a lot bigger deal than I did back then. You know, like, when you're riding that wave, you just sort of roll with it, and you don't have time to think. You know, which is such a blessing, especially at such a young age. You don't have too much time to think about it.
No, that's amazing. That's amazing. What, in terms of going so well out there, do you put a lot of it down to bowling frequency and just bowling loads, like lots of game time and stuff, or is it more working with a specialist like McGill?
I think it's a really good combination, and I think because they don't obviously it's every other week you bowl, you get time to really improve as a young player. So, you know, there are some weeks I'd look at the week, so I'd bowl with Stu maybe twice in the week, and I'd have grade training twice. And I'd look at it and go, I know I'm not going to be bowling on Saturday, so I can really try different things, try and get better, which is a really unique thing in our sort of world of county cricket and all that. As you guys know, you're just jumping from game to game all the time. There's rarely that time to just try something new and then be able to put it in a match, you know, a couple of weeks later. And obviously bowling so much really helps. It's great. But also the wickets there, they do suit me. So like I said earlier about bounce, you know, that's always there in Australia. So I think just all those things together really just meant I had a really great time.
No, that's awesome.
So from that point, Mace, the England call up. Tell me what that was like.
Well, yeah, that was weird again, because I first got called up to T20 side, and it was when I made my debut. It was my 5th T20, I think, which nowadays doesn't seem that rogue really, when you know, guys get sort of picked, you know, a lot earlier now. But back in 2017, that was really rare. You know, you didn't really get guys not playing much and then playing for England. So yeah, I remember actually sort of being there, and it was actually at the Utilita Bowl it's called now, isn't it? But the Aegeus, and I was in the squad, and I just sort of thought, oh, I'll just be around. I won't play in these games. I'll just sort of be here. And then we just sort of stood at the pitch, and Morgs was asking me like, oh, what does it do here? And you know, what sort of pace do you usually bowl here and stuff? And I was like, sort of talking through it, and then he went, so do you fancy making a debut tomorrow then? And I was like, well, yeah, go on then, why not? Yeah. You know, and it's, again, I had no time to think about it. Next thing you're out there. It was just amazing really. And you know, like I said, that back then there weren't really guys age 20 playing so much up until that point. So you know, I sort of first few weeks didn't really believe it, but you know, as it went on, I sort of, you know, started to feel at home, and yeah, it was a great time.
Yeah, unfortunately, me and Wrighty never got that far. Chris was on his way, I reckon, but a stressy, wasn't it, that slowed him down. Basically, Wrighty was, if I remember correctly, bowled himself into the ground, bowling pretty quick, and then start of the year, bowled quick in, was it Abu Dhabi, Chris? Where they went pre-season? I didn't go, I was injured.
Yeah.
And then the first game of the year, I wasn't playing, and maybe one of the bowlers wasn't playing. We were playing Derby. I think Shiv Chandapur was overseas, and rumour was it that Andy Flower would come to watch a certain Chris Wright. So Wrighty took it on himself to bowl about 18 overs on the bounce as fast as he could.
Geez,
I think later down the line caused him a few back issues as we travelled down to Middlesex. Me and Wrighty used to share rooms, and he woke up one morning. Every morning, my alarm would go off, and Wrighty would wake up to my old school game of Clash of Clans.
Yeah, I remember that.
And he's gone to get up, and he's woken up, and as he's gone to get up, he's gone in the back. So yeah, it was kind of hit the brakes there a little bit, didn't it, Chris?
Yeah, it did. It did. But there's a reason why you brought this up, right? Because obviously you've suffered a stress here as well, Mason, haven't you? Is a spinner, that's just chronic over bowling, right? Or is it? I'm trying to think of your action. I mean, obviously you put a lot of energy into it, and do you run in quicker than most or not?
I think the amount of overs is definitely the biggest factor. But I've actually spoken with Parky about this because he's had one as well, and so I think his was maybe more of a technical thing. It was maybe like sort of as he was sort of pivoting and then like following through, he was sort of putting strain on his back there. But it does happen. It does happen. Like there's so much cricket now. It's not the years gone by. You'd bowl all summer long and then see you in March, sort of thing. Like we're, if you're going well, or even if you're not, there's opportunity to go abroad in the winter, and I just think eventually it catches up with you. And I'd had such a heavy time, sort of trying to bowl at probably for a year, really trying to bowl at an intensity which I'd never ever been exposed to before. Like there was, on a Ashes tour, there's no net session you bowl in at 50%. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm there, age 20, trying to get in the team. If I don't bowl as well as I can possibly bowl, I'm going to stick out like a sore thumb and get smashed everywhere. And then I'm really trying to obviously improve, so I'm bowling more and more, and it just all adds up. And obviously that I had that, and I had another one after it as well. But I think it's just for spinner, it's the load. I think as a seamer, I think it's, you guys would know, but it's probably a combination of everything, isn't it? But you don't often look at a spinner and go, oh well, he's going to have back problems. But you just think if he bowls like that, 28 days in a row like I did, then he's probably going to have back problems.
Jeez. So was this injury straight off the back of the England tour then?
Yeah. So after that, I had maybe 2 weeks at home, and then I got sent out on a Lions trip to Jamaica, where, to be honest, I was absolutely knackered. I remember rooming with Ben Folkes, who'd been on the Ashes tour with me, and we were both just so drained. We'd already been picked to go to New Zealand straight after Jamaica as well on a test tour. And when we got there, it was just, like an intensity I don't think either of us really needed. And, because I didn't bowl that great, but nor was I back then. That I can't really say the lines and the main side were very aligned. So they didn't necessarily, think, some of them didn't necessarily think I should have been in the England team. And, there was a bit going on there. And I bowled far too much and far too often. Where really, I think looking at it now with hindsight, I don't think that would ever happen, because you'd give players that sort of time off. But I think going into it, as well as physically fatigued, I was mentally drained, from such a busy period. It probably takes things like that, for people to realise actually spin bowlers, need a bit of looking after too. Can't just turn up and do it every day. And then so I flew. So that tour was really tough for me, and then I went straight to New Zealand, and got off the plane there. I bowled twice, and I was just done. I couldn't really move. Couldn't do anything, which is a real shame, because I think, obviously having spoken to Trevor Bates around the time, I think I probably would have started that series, and given him a good chance.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that's gone on in a short space of time. So when you first signed your first professional contract with Hampshire, how old were you?
I was 18. Yeah.
And then what point did you have how old were you when you had your stress fracture?
I had just turned 21. Yeah.
So there's a lot of gone on there from what you've just spoke about, as in of like playing overseas, Shield cricket, call up to England in such a short space of time, and then an injury which obviously set you back quite a while. That's a lot. Did you find that, looking back at it now, that was so much that had gone on that you weren't even able to wrap your head around it, or did you find you were able to stay in the moment at those times?
No, it was a lot going on because, like I said, you sort of ride that wave for a certain period of time, and it's great, and you don't think about anything. But when you're sort of off it, you think, oh well, I'll just get back to what I was doing, and I'll be back on that trajectory. And then I obviously had my stress fracture. I came back too early from it. Again, got rushed back because it's only a spinner. Hampshire needed me because Dawes was injured at the time. We had like an unbelievable 50 over team. We felt we could win the tournament, which luckily we did. It was worth it. But that sort of put me back for another year. And I think really sort of this is my sort of thing at the moment, which I do worry for some of the young guys getting selected for England. Is it's great now, and you think it's all great, but there's not necessarily like a volume of cricket to fall back on were it to go wrong. And I think I found out that, and I'd obviously played pretty solidly for 3 years there, and I'd played a fair chunk of cricket, but not loads. And I think when I came back, I realised actually I'm still a very young player with a lot to learn, and I have a long way to go. So obviously on like, if you describe it as form, I was sort of trending upwards, and I was in great form. But when I wasn't, I didn't necessarily have the experience to fall back on to get me back there quickly.
Yeah.
And I think as a older player now, if I don't bowl well a week, that's fine because I've got more experience now, and I can get myself back to a good place much quicker. And obviously back then it was, I'd come back to bowling after 9 months out and be like, why aren't I getting everyone out? Like, I don't get it. Why aren't I, I'm not bowling as well as I was before, or like bit stiff, but like don't have the pace I had. And your expectations are very different from the actual reality. And I think a lot of that comes from experience and sort of going through these events where I know I can bounce back, but I'm gonna have to be sort of kind to myself for 4 or 6 weeks here while I just find a rhythm back. And actually, I just need to find rhythm. I don't need to worry about outcome just yet. Things like that. And the first time I had a stressor, I didn't really have that. I sort of expected to come back and be exactly where I was before, which is never going to be the case.
Yeah, I speaking to Carl Abbott yesterday actually, and he said he'd spoken to one of our analysis about Josh Hazlewood before he got selected had bowled 1,000 first-class overs before he got called up. I know he's been playing for quite a while, but like you've got some young bowlers that are coming through that are kind of in the England setup, but not first team, but kind of Lions and pushing towards that England setup where some of them haven't even bowled 1,000 first-class balls. And, if they do have an injury like that, what have they got to fall back? And they haven't. And that can be quite dangerous at times because, one, they don't know how far they can push the body because they haven't really been exposed to doing that. And two, they haven't got the base of skill and resilience there. So it can be a bit of a tricky path.
Well, in this current Lions team, I like to think I'm a little bit of a cricket geek, but there's a couple of players on there who I've just never seen. Bowlers here. So, like, for example, Mitch Stanley, I think is the name. Now, I've heard he bowls quick. I've never seen him bowl, ever. I'm like, like you're saying, they are really throwing a few people in there, aren't they? Without, like you've said there, 1,000 balls or whatever. There's not a lot of experience. Going back to the stressy there, Mason, I think, and I didn't expect this to be kind of something I bring up on this podcast, but I still feel like physios and S&Cs get the stressy stuff wrong because they never talk about intensity. So, for example, you've gone from great success in, you've got your county cricket, you've got the grade cricket, and then you play the Shield stuff. But then, like you say, you're bowling at the intensity, and I imagine this is for spin as well. You're putting that little bit more in, aren't you? In the international nets, like you said there, and then all of a sudden you're putting more intensity in at the highest level you can, and it's like, yeah, like you say, you haven't quite got that foundation there. I think people struggle to quantify that, and they just talk about overs. Barks has bowled 50 overs this week. He's in the red zone. I'm like, well, 50 overs on a flat one at the Rose Bowl is very different to a nibbler at Bristol, for example. But they don't. I don't know. Or like Mason's bowled 20 overs here against Sussex on a big spinner at Hove versus he's literally bowled 15 overs in a test match at the SCG. Well, chances are the game at the SCG is going to take quite a bit more out of you. Do you know what I mean? But they don't.
Yeah, and I think that's such a big thing needs to be taken into account. For me, 4 overs in a T20, I'm out of breath. I'm absolutely, because it is so intense. Every single ball is just so. If you don't get that in a necessarily 4-day game, and similarly, if I'm bowling at J Root in a net, every ball's an effort ball, isn't it? Because every ball is like this has to be the best ball I've ever bowled in my life. Concentrating harder, putting more into it. I'm trying to spin it slightly more. I'm all those sorts of things. And I think that's something I really learned from the Australians actually. When I did play for New South Wales, was the nets before all the seamers, every ball, there's a guy stood there with the speed gun. And when we're facing Doug Bollinger, which wasn't ideal, and they're stood there going like, "Come on, Dougie, you got more than that," because they only count the overs they bowl at that intensity. And I just thought that's something we don't think. So they're going, well, your match pace is 138 Ks. So if you're bowling in the nets at 130 Ks, it's not the same. You're not loading your body in the same way for the match. So they would be there and telling guys to bowl quicker and put more in, which again I've never really seen here. But obviously, given it's a very different style, in that we don't have 10 days to build up for every game, but I definitely needs to be taken into consideration around stress fractures.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point about the speed gun.
Yeah, I will say with that though, it's good cranking up the pace to get it what it is, but I'm sure with certain bowling coaches, and I like, for instance, for us, Wrighty, Pop would be wanting to make sure you're doing the right things with your action rather than just getting the intensity down there, or else it can be null and void almost. Mace, sorry, just switching on to something else. You got injured, you've come back, and obviously the trajectory has probably slowed down a little bit from that quick acceleration early on in your career. Have you found it since then, since your injury and getting back playing?
At the start I found it quite difficult because, like I said, I wasn't at the level I thought I was going to be, and it probably took me quite a long time. It probably that's actually not until after COVID really, and it was a bit of a blessing for me having a bit of time off in COVID. Because I obviously had a year out with my stress fracture, and I had a year of bowling where it still hurt, but it was fine, which I'm sure some people have gone through. And then COVID sort of gave me a chance just to get right a bit. And, we only had like 5 or 6 games that year, didn't win. I remember just thinking, I can just attack these games and it's fine. And then, obviously since then it's sort of been what it is. Like any spinner in the country, really, it's tough to always get a game. Obviously I've struggled with that at Hampshire the last few years, especially in a team which is obviously so good as we've been at Hampshire the last few years. Every game's like a cup final. It's all about the 11 that's going to win that match. And next thing you know, you haven't played for 6 weeks, and it's quite tough then to build a rhythm. And I think that's a great thing about me moving to Glamorgan this year is obviously I've played pretty much every game. I can find a bit of a rhythm, but even looking around in the game, I'm looking and going, well, I'm going to have to bowl a good chunk of overs here, so I'm just going to have to settle into a rhythm. And as the years gone on, I've learned a lot more about myself as a player and where I feel like this winter, I'm going to try and improve. So I've sort of been put in some scenarios I haven't really been in before, and it's not so it's not a straight line to get to where you want to get to. But what I would say is I think there needs to be maybe a bit of acknowledgement that, certainly spinners. If you're expecting them to be amazing age 20 and then all the way through to whenever they retire, you're probably going to be disappointed for the most part, apart from the odd unicorn here and there. But for everyone else, you're going to have to go through sort of ups and downs and gain experience, so that when you get to, like Dorse's a great example now. He's 33, and he's taken 50 wickets this year. He's twice the bowler he was 2 or 3 years ago. But he's had a lot of ups and downs along the way. But someone like him, obviously in England, his batting has helped him get to that point.
Yeah.
But obviously, as a leg spinner as well, it's maybe even slightly harder to get in the side. But what I'd say, just playing regularly and really learning about myself is, I feel, given me sort of a foundation now, age 27, where I can go, right, this is a sort of player I am now, I'm going to be, and this is where I want to get to. And, I can really see for the first time, actually, the sort of bowler that I'm going to probably end up as.
And obviously, that move to Glamorgan, I was saying to Wright before you came on, me and Wright were a little bit different. We were told we were being let go. You still had a year left. But I wanted to discuss to you your thoughts on moving to a new club, and at what point did the penny drop for you of, this is what I'm doing, I'm going to look to move clubs down the line, and just, that's where I want to be?
It was probably about halfway through last year. I was turning up. No, the 4-day side, I could sort of, I said to Hampshire a lot, I can see why there's a lot of games I don't play, and I completely, and I'm not naive in that sense. I completely get it. But there was some T20 games where I really felt I couldn't quite believe I was missing out. And I remember sitting with Pop, actually, and I said to him, look, if I'm not going to play on this wicket, I actually don't see why I'm here. And sad as it is to leave your sort of your home club and that, I just felt I had to be playing more. And the decision was made for me, like I said, quite a bit of a while ago. And it's obviously really tough to take, and I think it probably took me slightly longer than it needed to say, actually, I'm going to move for a bit more opportunity, because I was absolutely loving what we were doing. And but it just sort of got to a point where the team's doing great and it's amazing, but I'm actually really not part of it at all.
Yeah.
Have you moved yourself down to Cardiff, or do you still live in Southampton way or whatever?
Yeah, so I'm still down in Hampshire, but I'm going to move sort of over the course this winter. It's obviously quite a lot to sort out, and it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. But I'm going to obviously move up there and sort of throw myself in, really, as I would hope. When I was obviously a Hampshire player, all the new players that came on, I obviously really hoped that they'd throw themselves in and give it 100%. And I feel like with Glamorgan, I sort of going to do the same. So, it's obviously end of a chapter, but the start of a new one as well.
Speaking of ending chapters and starting a new one, when I knew Chris early on, someone who was massive on Football Manager, he was always on it day in, day out. Anytime he got a few seconds, he'd open that laptop, make a transfer deal, close it, Mrs. just got home. It'd be so discreet. And then obviously Chris has moved on. He's grown up a bit more. He's not able to access Football Manager. He's got more things going on in his life. I joined Hampshire. Mason Crane, he's the new coming. He's the new coming. He can go 20, 30 seasons, mate, within the full year of just playing the whole. And he's actually way more successful than anyone I've known. He has spreadsheets. He has names on who can play what format. Everything. It's unreal.
That's, to be fair, what an elite game. Are you seriously that into it?
I'm not. Everything I've said there is valid and true. There's not one thing I've said that's not.
Yeah, no, I am well into it. It's it's my escape, really. I think some people go and play golf in the afternoons. I don't really like golf, so I open the laptop and, like I said, a bit of Foot Manager. And I think all the things we're saying there about obviously how sort of intense cricket can be, I think finding something you can cling on to that's not necessarily cricket. But for me, obviously, it's been that and games and that sort of thing. So, but yeah, no, Barks is right. It's quite a more of a lifestyle, I think, at this point than a bit of a hobby.
Wrighty would be he'd have laptop open, Dr. Pepper, whereas Mason is laptop open, cup of tea, chocolate digestives, and he's sort.
Oh, that sounds good. What sort? Are you doing English leagues or are you doing foreign leagues? What's your go-to?
Oh well, all sorts really. I mean, there was I was very excited for last year's game because it was the first year that Worthing, my the town where I'm from, that they were on it. So I was very excited for that. So I just stayed with them the whole time on that one. This one's been more of a sort of realistic hopping around, really. So I've gone from everywhere from sort of lower leagues to, ended up with Frankfurt has been most of the year.
I like that. I love
yeah,
the fact
no,
that you're in
give it all a go, see what happens. Yeah.
Just on the whole, you took over Worthing. I know you've won it. How quickly did you win the Champions League with Worthing?
Oh, I would have been in the maybe late 30s, I'm going to say.
30
but yeah,
years.
As in the 2030s.
Oh, right.
Oh yeah, the game went on. I mean, I finished it maybe in the 57, 58 season, something like that.
Oh, that's insane. That's unreal.
Yeah. No, I yeah, like I said, I opened the game the first day it came out, and that was it. I didn't do anything else the entire year, just that one team. So yeah, pretty cool. But at the same time, you're like, get a life, mate. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that is cool. That is cool. To be honest, that's men. I'm jealous, to be honest. Yeah, quite jealous of that. Should we move back into the art of leg spin here? Because before we sort of wrap up, we've talked a lot about your journey and stuff, but our listeners are probably thinking, right, let's get some practical stuff in there. So I would love to know how you start a spell as a leggy, because I think it's widely accepted that leg spin's like the hardest art in the game, and for anyone starting a spell, it's tough. But as a leggy, especially, like, have you got any tips or any strategies to get yourself into a spell when you know what I mean? It's hard, basically.
Yeah, no. Well, this is actually something that again, this year I've realised is something I need to get better at is starting, because once you're in, you've bowled a few overs and you found rhythm. That's sort of that's what you recognise yourself as. Do you know what I mean? That first bit, I think it's all about sort of, for me, I think it's all about percentages. Like, right, like high percentage. Where's the the ball? Whatever, it's a newer ball, right? More like to slide it on. Do I need the extra catcher at the moment? Let's get a feel for everything. The wind, the end. Do I start slightly quicker? Maybe just try and get a few out there, and maybe do I like set myself more of a target of what shot I'm going to make him play? I'm going to make him drive every ball this over. Like just thinking drive. Maybe have an extra fielder there for a minute. And I think as well, something is really tough is being quite strong with your captain on where you're at in your spell. So often it'll be like the first time you really land on it, maybe really good ball, you might beat the edge, all those sorts of things. They might go, right, we're ready now, let's get a catcher in, let's and actually go, no, I'm not quite there yet, give me another over or two. Yeah, and like all those sorts of things mixed together, really. And then once you sort of you've landed a few and you feel like you can, right, okay, now I can maybe bowl a slightly slower one. Now I can, I'm feeling like actually I could bowl a googly here or anything. All those sorts of sort of percentage plays before you go, right, okay, this is the bowler I am. Now every ball I can sort of stand at the top of my mark and go, this one's slightly slower drifting in. This I'm going to tie it to the stumps, like more side spin. Come wide of the crease here, more overspin. Before you get to that point, I think it's like almost play a little game yourself and go, right, I've bowled 3 overs for 10. Okay, right, I'm in.
Yeah, because again, Keith and I were talking before, it's kind of doubly tough for a spinner, because obviously if Keith and I are opening the bowling, potentially we've just finished warming up, so we're in a bit more of a groove already, whereas you guys are going to get like randomly thrown the ball
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? And you've got to kind
Yeah.
of like.
But I do often think that. I do often think like, I haven't actually bowled a ball for like 3 hours, and you're going, go on then, like start your spell there, bowl them out.
Yeah.
And again, that's sort of, again, something you've got to come to terms with. So, like getting used to that. Okay, I'm just gonna have to turn up and bowl it. So, incorporating that in my warm ups a bit. Like, okay, and you warm up in the morning and might bowl a few like on the full, whatever. Actually, the odd morning, just going, do you know what? I'm circle the arms a few times. I'm actually gonna get straight into it. Just I'm gonna practice the first 3 balls. And the other thing you got to factor in as well is how they're gonna play you. I think seam bowling, obviously, you hit it where it's bowled. That they don't necessarily go, oh well, I'm gonna run at Wrighty today. From his first ball, I'm gonna start taking him down. It's actually, if he bowls well, he bowls well. Whereas spin, they actually might try and hit you early on. It's like I said about that sort of trying to make them play a certain shot, can really play into your hands early on, because they might think, right, well, I'm going to get a big sweep away, get a man out there. I'm going to run down at him, try and get long off put back. There are all sorts of things you have to take into account. And maybe, the first few overs, actually watching the batsman just as much, getting yourself right into the game, thinking, right, how's he trying to hit me? Where's he thinking? What's he trying to do? And I think once you sort of have the confidence to be able to think not just about yourself, but about the batsman and the game as well, that's one thing I've really learned that's really helped me early on.
There's one thing I'd say, I've only witnessed this with the other person, is G and Patel, in practice, Mason. When me and you have set like almost a game scenario of field positions, that's the most engaged I've found myself and another spinner, because it's so intense. It's like I value my wicket more than anyone when I face Mason, because he's on it, and I know if I get out, he's going to be celebrating, he's going to be up for it. And that's also something that you have to start off cold sometimes and get into that game scenario and work pretty hard to get it right. You mentioned about you might be trying to bowl leg spin and think, right, I'm going to get in the game, get this guy driving. I would recommend, if you've got Chris Wright mid off, don't, because it's a single every time.
Yeah, it is these days, man. If you, I was at mid off. It was just a few years ago now, but it's still the same story. And Parky Callum was bowling at Ollie Pope, and it was a short boundary towards the leg side, so I didn't do mid on, which is where I usually would be. So I was doing mid off. He hit the ball, every ball at me, and ran. And I was like, shit, I've got to move it. Because Parky couldn't build any, not that he's going to build that much anyway, because they got 500. They were awesome. I was like, right, I'm going to have to try somewhere else here. Bearing in mind the offside was bigger. So I was like, right, I'll go and lurk at backward point. You know what I mean? Because he wasn't hitting it there. And then he just started reverse sweeping everything. So it's an art form, hiding yourself in the field. But
I would say as well is it must be quite difficult, because just even playing with spinners and yourself, that knowing that you have the ability to change your game on its head so quickly, people want to see the ball beating the outside edge. They want oohs and ahs. It must be quite difficult to try and control the team's emotion while you've got your job to do, if you know what I mean. Because everyone wants you to start doing things straight away. They want a tight field, they want men around the back. But from being cold, then bowling the second hardest skill after left arm slow swingers, it must
it's hard to bowl now.
It must be quite difficult.
Yeah, and again, I think one of the real hardest parts of the game for me is when the ball's spinning and they go, right, go on then, bowl them out, and you're like, what do you mean?
Yeah,
and they're like, come on, get them out, and you're the other thing, you're one of one or maybe two as a spinner. Obviously, as a seamer, you guys, you're normally 3, 4, maybe even 5 of you. So one of you has a slightly off day. Doesn't really matter. Someone will get it right. Enough of you bowl well, and you can come back at a more convenient time. Whereas the spinner, especially if the conditions are right, they just go, go on then, bowl them out, and everyone just sort of waits with bated breath. And like I said earlier about trying to be strong with the captain about having too many fielders around the bat. They you come on to bowl and like you see all these helmets and pads coming out, and you think, I haven't bowled a ball yet. and they just want everyone around the bat and all this sorts of thing. It's a really hard thing to control. And again, like you have to sort of come to terms with it as a bowler that, okay, I'm going to be in that situation at times. How am I going to cope with that? What am I going to go to? Like Shane Warne obviously used to say a lot about that sort of scenario when it's in your favour, is actually bowl more defensively, attack with the field, and actually being able to go, yeah, no, I'm just going to, right, I'll just settle into a rhythm here. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to do nothing outrageous. I'm not going to try to get them out. I'm not going to try too hard. Put the fielders where you want them, but I'm just going to find my rhythm. And it's a really hard thing to do when the expectation is really high on you. You find yourself going, no, I need a wicket. I'm going to, right, that's it. I'm going to really spin this one like a googly leg spinner, top spinner, googly slider. It's actually having that sort of self-control as well. Such a huge skill for any spinner.
And I will say, I know what it's like. She said to Wrighty as a seamer, batters aren't thinking they're going to run at you. For sure, they think it and do it against me, mate. So I know you're paying.
Yeah, well, yeah, you can still hit him in the head if you want to, mate. I can't.
Having these chats, though, does make you realise that the spinner, and like you say, you're right, ultimately there probably is only one or two spinners, but it's really important to create a bowling group culture that includes the spinner. Because, like, do you know what I mean? Spinners have a big role to play in the first innings of a game. If it's not spinning, you've got to, you've got to be economical and stuff. In the same way that seamers, we've got to build pressure on maybe slow turners. Although, yeah, sure, perhaps it's more in favour of the spinner, but we've got a massive job too, rather than just being like, oh, seamers, you've got to bowl them out, it's green. Spinner, you've got to bowl them out because it's spinning. It's not, yeah, it makes you realise how often spinners are left out a little bit. I don't know if that's a bit harsh.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
definitely.
And it's something I think a lot of teams, I think you can see they struggle with. They throw the ball to a spinner. And they're not necessarily feel part of like the bowling team. And I think all the best teams I've played in, and whenever I've sort of felt like I've done my best, I'm a real member of the bowling unit, and like I said, it's a massive part to play. I can try and help what's going on at your end. So like if a seamer comes up to me and goes, look, man, I've got it swinging that end, whatever, I can go, oh well, I'll try and build pressure from this, and then I'll maybe try and I'll get an extra fielder out. I'll have an extra fielder in the ring. I'll build up some pressure for you so that, maybe you get a wicket that end. And, similarly go, oh, we're trying to get it reversing. It's like, okay, what do you want me to do with it then? You tell me what you want and I can try and do it. And similarly, I can turn around and say, oh, mate, like, it's really spinning out the rough. Would you mind coming that side for a couple of overs? And I think that realization from everyone that actually one can really help the other. And you sort of buy a bit of credit in the bank then. So if it doesn't quite go right for the seamers, the spinner can come on and instead of like, fucking hell, why am I bowling these overs? I shouldn't be bowling. It's okay, that's fine. Don't get it right every day. I'll come on and do my best and you can come on later. And similarly, on a spinning wicket, then you've got a bit of credit as a spinner. If you don't get it right, the seamers, they come on and go, right, no, we'll keep it together, have a bit of a rest, try the other end. We'll keep it together for a bit and come back on, all those sorts of things. And I think as well, if you look at the best teams in the world, if you look at Australia, for example, Nathan Lyon, I mean, he is such a huge part of their bowling attack. He's not a spinner who just gets thrown the ball and good luck to you, mate. He's as much a part of it as Mitchell Stark is. And that's probably half the reason he does so well, because he's so sort of important to how everyone else can bowl. That actually it's in everyone's interest that he does really well.
I've got one more question for you. I know Chris has got to get off, but would you say this is kind of a myth? Would you say this myth is true? Have you experienced it? If you play with someone that's absolute rockets, do you feel that you've burgled a few wickets at the other end because people try and go after you?
Yeah, absolutely. That was what that was the thing when we had Fidel. I thought, oh, you beauty, I'm mop up here because but the problem is he got him out. So he's probably cost me 50 odd wickets in my career where I think, oh, come on a minute, get the last few, and they'd all be gone because they just kick them over against him. But I felt that with Tino when we had Tino Best. I'll tell you this very quick story. We were playing Notts at home and we were going to win, and I was bowling around the wicket to all the right-handers to this enormous leg side boundary, and Samit was not out, and I think maybe Tino might have got 5 or 6 wickets, but he was bowling really fast, and I was at the other end, and Luke Fletcher came out, and I overheard Samit say to Fletcher, he goes, "Okay, you take Tino, I'll take Mason." And next thing you know, he's come like running down, trying to hit me 105 meters over the leg side, and he's got out. And I just thought, I've not got that wicket there. He's, Tino's got me that one. But yeah, you do feel it. But I actually think it's such an important combination to be able to have. Is a really fast bowler. That's, in my view, and again, no, I might be wrong, I might be outdated, it might just be my personal opinion. I think every bowling attack should have a wide range of bowlers. So, you've got to have someone who can swing it, someone who can seam it, someone who's really accurate, someone who's got high pace, and then, in my view, an attacking spinner. And I just think, if you need wickets, you put on a guy with high pace and an attacking spinner. What a contrast to have to try and deal with. You need so many different skills to be able to cope with that. Plus, you're probably going to create chances at one of the ends. And I think that's where, we're all a bit obsessed with pace at the moment. It's like 5 really quick bowlers is great, but actually who's going to build the pressure that they can come on and, get wickets towards the end. But yeah, you're right. A really quick bowler at the other end is such a cool asset to have, because, I'm almost the complete opposite. So they need to bat completely differently at my end.
Yeah, completely agree. Well, look, Mason, that's been awesome. I'm sure everyone listening will really appreciate your story and the advice you've given at the end. So thanks very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thanks, mate. And catch you all next week.
Take it easy.